Well, no, I mean, the social engineers admit that they want to have one-child policy, that they want to decide what we're going to be when we grow up. They're literally organizing all of human society in a nightmarish way. I mean, we know when people try to organize things, from top down, it always is a disaster. But they want to wreck things. And that's my next question to you, because you're, an insider who really studies this. Every incumbent, whether Republican or Democrat, is being thrown out of office, whether it's Specter, whether it's what, just happened in a congressional seat in Hawaii, whether it's Massachusetts, it doesn't matter. I've never seen such a realignment against the establishment. So they've really, Obama was the fake revolution against Bush. Now people realize, my God, Obama is the real takeover. And so people are really, Zbigniew Brzezinski last week said, our global governance is in trouble. He said the people have finally woken up worldwide to us. We're now in trouble. I don't know if you saw that speech, but they admit they're in trouble. How do you see them striking back? Because from every way I slice this, we are now really at the make it or break it crossroads.
Well, there is a real push. And again, I was in the room in The Hague in November 2000 when Jacques Chirac gave his speech calling Kyoto the global warming treaty that covered 35 industrial titans like Iceland, Luxembourg, Belgium, Slovenia, Slovakia, but not China, India, Mexico, Brazil, and so on. I was in the room with some members of Congress and a few other Americans who were the only ones surprised when Jacques Chirac, who at the time was the president of France, said Kyoto was the first component of an authentic global governance. Jim Sensenbrenner is a Wisconsin Republican who marched outside and held an impromptu press conference that I stood there watching the left-wing press swearing at him. The Guardian reporter was swearing bollocks at him. As Sensenbrenner said, if you want to keep us out of something, call it global governance. Well, I said the Guardian noted that Obama's diplomats were telling EU diplomats there may be a delay on Kyoto 2 in the United States because he's considering something called a congressional executive agreement. That was, I heard you mention NAFTA before. NAFTA is precedent. It's never been tried, the constitutionality of this. It did not get to this. But the issue of Congress waiving Article 2, Section 2 ratification, advice and consent, the two-thirds ratification. NAFTA was a treaty between three countries that Congress just said is not a treaty. And they granted something called fast-track authority, which is a suggestion of what should be in it and a promise to give it an up or down, no amendment, no filibuster, 50+1 vote in both houses. Now, if you do this, and the administration apparently is telling Europeans we may have to try this because we're going to call Kyoto 2 not a treaty, you're going to have a problem because it's then left up to the courts, and you know how activist they become. But what you're talking about is you have one bite at the apple. Don't trust the courts. You saw campaign finance. Oh, don't worry, the court will fix it. Don't trust them. What you have to do is block it at the granting of fast track for Kyoto 2. They won't call it Kyoto 2. They're going to call it Johannesburg because that's where the World Environment Summit is in 2012. They're actually going to try to get Kyoto 2, according to lefty advisors to Obama, like this fella Nigel Purvis, who's counseling him, just declared this next key global warming treaty not a treaty. It quacks, flies, and does everything odious like a duck. But if you get Congress to say it's not a treaty, and the only difference is it means no two-thirds ratification, well, that's your one bite at the apple. The courts aren't going to help you, is my guess. And you have a 50+1 requirement, and it would take, you see incumbents being thrown out, but I just don't know, given the way, you didn't see the Democrats.
So they're going to come at us with a violation of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, treason. Like this article, top official says feds may not process illegals referred from Arizona. So, citizens have no rights, but if illegal aliens get arrested, we won't pick them up. So it's the same thing here. The federal government just doesn't care what we say or who we elect or what we do. They're just going to do it because they're God. Expanding on that, and trying to see where you see this going. What about the Republicans? They've got a big hand in allowing this to happen as well.
Yeah, you've got a problem right now. For example, this week we're supposed to have a vote. Just requires 51 or 50 votes, not 60, saying EPA does not have the authority to do this through the back door. Now, this, of course, came through the courts. It was a 5-4 decision. We lost. I represented the skeptic scientists in this case. The Supreme Court ruled 5-4 in Massachusetts versus EPA, saying EPA has the authority, does not have to, but has the authority to treat exhalation as pollution. Well, there's a resolution by Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and she's saying EPA does not, Congress is allowed to vote veto major rules within 60 days, and she's saying no. The problem is it has 41 co-sponsors, 3 Democrats, and that means 3 Republicans have said no. They're from the Northeast, to no surprise, Scott Brown and the ladies from Maine. Now, Scott Brown, during the campaign, said, climate changes. We all know this. What I don't want to do is something as big as what EPA is proposing or cap and trade without getting to the bottom of the scientific scandals. Well, I assure you we've not gotten to the bottom of the scientific scandals. I submitted a Freedom of Information Act request to the University of Virginia on Friday. I'm not sure how far we'll get, but we will litigate it. We're suing NASA probably this week for our own climate gate. We're pushing this. But right now we've already got 3 Republicans in the Senate who have not co-sponsored a bill to say EPA will not do this to the back door. Instead, the world's greatest deliberative body, why we shall deliberate on what will be the biggest intervention in our economy in our history. And you have 3 Republicans not just co-sponsoring this thing. You need to shut down the business of the Senate if the administration tries to do this through the back door. And 3 Republicans have not co-sponsored.
Is that why they're so scared of Rand Paul? Because he gave that speech saying we're not going to let you use fake environmentalism to shut our economy down?
I'm sure he troubles some by pointing some things out. I was told by the Spanish green jobs professor, Dr. Calzada, in an email that Rand Paul, in one of his acceptance speeches, pointed out that there's a new steel mill in Kentucky, the North American Stainless plant, with the 175 workers. I write about this in my book, Power Grab, in which those steel workers are jobs that are sent from Spain because of cap and trade and green job schemes. The CEO was very clear. He said you can make windmills out of steel, but you can't make steel using windmills. I'm paraphrasing. But Rand Paul pointed this out, and I don't think people in Washington like to hear the idea that the state is not responsible for economic growth.
Yeah, I mean, the grass grows, the sky is blue, the sun comes up in the morning because Barack Obama reads off a teleprompter. Stay there. Final segment with our guest, the new book. I've got to read it. Power Grab, How Obama's Green Policies Will Steal Your Freedom and Bankrupt America.